Hello everyone, thanks for joining today's CSR Talk about what is the role of companies in today's reality to support. My name is Clementine Gauthier, I'm the SVP of Corporate Social Responsibility for Teleperformance. I'm seeing a lot of people from all over the world joining this insightful session, very happy to be here. And to be here with Veronica Rossini from TENT. So Veronica, could you maybe shortly introduce yourself and explain us a little bit more about the current refugee crisis and TENT's role in this important context?
Absolutely, Clementine. Thank you so much for having me here with you today. It's a real pleasure. My name is Veronica Rossini, and I'm head up all of marketing and communications at the TENT Partnership for Refugees. And we're here to mark World Refugee Day, which happens every year on June 20th. And June is really the month where the United Nations puts the world's attention on the refugee crisis. And as you say, Clementine, unfortunately, the refugee crisis is going nowhere. This year, the UN has just announced that 100 million people around the world are currently displaced, so both refugees and internally displaced people. And this is the highest number of people that we have ever seen being displaced around the world by crises, by war, by political instability, by violence. There are, I think, two big events which kind of, stick out to me over the past 12 months that I think are worth mentioning. So the first was the fall of Kabul to Afghanistan back in kind of late August of last year, that led to hundreds of thousands of Afghans leaving Afghanistan. I think those images continue to haunt all of us today. So countries like the US have welcomed about 75,000 Afghans. Canada has welcomed tens of thousands. The European Union, particularly Germany, has welcomed tens of thousands more. So there has been this really sort of considerable influx of Afghans into our countries. And the second, of course, which is front of mind for everyone today, is Ukraine. We are reaching something like 7 million Ukrainians displaced by the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Most Ukrainians have fled to nearby countries like Poland, like Moldova, like the Czech Republic, but more and more we are seeing kind of secondary waves of migration to other countries in Western Europe, like Italy, like Spain, countries with a really meaningful Ukrainian diaspora, and countries like the US and Canada have also said they would welcome 100,000 or more Ukrainian refugees. So I will end by saying that the outpouring of support that we're seeing from individuals, from governments, from the business community, particularly in light of the Ukraine crisis, has been astonishing. When we come to talk about what companies can do, I do really hope that the solidarity that we are showing for Ukrainian refugees can really be applied to refugees all over the world.
Well, thank you very much for these insights. I believe I read that refugees in average remain displaced for 21 years. So I believe that's why, of course, they need immediate assistance. And we see all this generosity happening in the recent Ukrainian crisis, of course. But that's where it is also critical to bring long-term inclusion. And one of the ways is, of course, to provide employment perspectives. Could you maybe tell us more about what TENT is doing about that? What is your mission?
Absolutely. And that's, as you rightly say, Clementine, that's exactly where we come in. So one of the biggest challenges that refugees face when they arrive in a new host community, and we're thinking here less about kind of refugee camp scenarios, but more when refugees are resettled in or seek asylum in Europe or Canada or Latin America or the US. One of the biggest challenges that they face is finding employment, and that's for a number of reasons. Some perhaps more obvious and some less so. So the first is language barriers. So it is often the case that when a refugee arrives in a new country, they're still learning the language, they're not yet proficient. And many companies believe that in order to be able to recruit a person, they need to be completely fluent in the language. I would dispute that, and we can come on to that perhaps. But that's kind of an assumption that is often made. So it makes it really hard for refugees to find a job. And there are other things like, refugees often come without a social network, without knowing people in the new country. They don't really understand, how the job market works. Where does someone go to find jobs? They might have come from a country where LinkedIn isn't the place to go to find a job. Or there might be cultural norms that are very prevalent in their country, which kind of don't apply to the new country that they're in. So they might not know how to carry out interviews in a successful way. That means that they will land a job. So all of these things mean that refugees have, especially refugee women, have a higher rate of unemployment than other immigrants or the native-born population. Another thing that often comes up is that refugees often have to leave in a hurry. They can't take their accreditations, their diplomas, their university degrees with them. So when they arrive, they can't do the job that they have been trained to do because they have no way of proving that they were a doctor, an engineer, or whatever it might be. So that's where TENT steps in, and TENT is a network of well over 220 major companies around the world, companies like Teleperformance, but companies in really every sector, and just to name a few, like Amazon, H&M, Starbucks, Philips, and these are all companies that have made a commitment to help refugees integrate economically in their new communities. They do this in a number of ways, primarily through hiring and training refugees directly into their workforce, but also by supporting refugee entrepreneurs or developing products that are better suited for refugees. And the thesis here is that we think that companies can have the most impact on a refugee's life when they think more long-term than a one-off philanthropic gift. And that's not to say that that's not important. Philanthropic donations are really important. But when you're thinking long term, we think that businesses can have a real competitive advantage when they think about including refugees into their own workforce. And Clementine, perhaps it's a good time for you to tell us a little bit more about Teleperformance's incredible initiatives in place for refugees, particularly on the Colombian project that we are partnering on. And one of the refugee crises that's so front of mind as well right now is the Venezuelan refugee crisis, where about 6 million people have fled the country. It's overtaken Syria in terms of the size of the crisis, and it's so incredible that companies like yours are stepping in to help Venezuelans really integrate into their new communities.
Yeah, absolutely. So Teleperformance inclusion has been very key. We have been engaged in impact sourcing for over a decade. So through this impact sourcing initiative, we are trying to train and hire people coming from vulnerable groups, and typically refugees are part of that. We have a program for several years now at Teleperformance Colombia, with partnering with TENT to hire Venezuelan refugees. So far, we have been able to hire more than 2,200 Venezuelan refugees in our workforce. And I totally agree with you, Veronica. That's a very effective way not only to have an impact on the employees themselves, because they are able to provide for themselves, for their families, they are able to integrate better as well in the new country where they're settling. But that's also actually a win-win. That makes total business sense, because we see as well that we're able to engage people with diverse background, which is always good for creativity. We also see a lot of people with very good skills, good education levels, English proficiency, which for us is very important, as well as people with a strong commitment, less attrition, etc. So you are able to create a lot of emulation of motivation within the employee group by bringing diversity, by also sharing some common values, some projects, among the company, and it also has a business positive impact. So that's very something that we believe in and try to further expand.
That's really interesting, Clementine. And I know that diversity and inclusion is obviously really front of mind at Teleperformance. And I think one of the other things that we're seeing right now with businesses is that, as a result of the labor shortages off the back of COVID-19, I think businesses are sort of being nudged towards thinking about hiring groups that they might have perhaps overlooked, maybe a year or two ago. And we're seeing that as a result of that, kind of refugees are being considered kind of much more for jobs, which I think, it comes out of a need. But as you say, I think once you can make, a compelling business case as to what refugees bring to the workforce, when you can also show that you're doing something good for society and also good for your business, I think, it's great to see kind of more companies like, follow Teleperformance's lead and see this as a solution to their labor shortage issues. But Clementine, I know that Teleperformance has done, a lot in response to the Ukraine crisis as well, the worst refugee crisis in Europe since the Second World War. So perhaps you can share with us a little bit more about your work in that sphere as well.
Yes, we have actually organized quite a comprehensive type of support. First and foremost, because we do have employees in Ukraine, so that also touched us in first instance. We had about 300 people over there, so we were able to settle some hotlines for them to guide them, to help them. We have also provided shelter, food, etc. for them and their families whenever they were able to reach neighboring countries. We have also organized some philanthropy raise. So Teleperformance as a company has done a corporate donation of $1 million to Red Cross and to UNICEF to be able to provide immediate relief, providing food, health kits, etc., etc. And we have also seen an incredible support and generosity from all of our employees across the globe because we have opened an online donation platform for everyone who would like to participate to donate. And we've seen an incredible support from everyone in the group. That was truly amazing from all over the world, as well as many in-kind donation happening to gather some clothes, some food, etc., etc. Another important aspect was also to put our expertise to help. So, for example, we are, as we speak, handling pro bono hotlines to help Ukrainian refugees answering calls for emergency lines, especially. Another aspect, and it liaises back with all of the discussion we've just had, is how we could also provide some long-term response beyond the immediate crisis, specifically by providing them with employment. So, for example, we try to give priority for any of our Ukrainian employees who are willing to relocate to any city out of the Ukraine, especially in Poland, in Romania, and in Portugal, where we have already welcomed several families.
Thank you, Clementine. It's so inspiring to hear what Teleperformance has been doing, and what a good time for us to reflect on everything that you've achieved. And thank you so much for your leadership.
Thank you so much, Veronica, for being part of this very interesting discussion today. And I would like to thank all of the audience for listening. Don't hesitate to share your insights and your comments following the CSR talks, and to follow up on our social media to know more. Thank you all.